My name is Damien Abrahams. I'm originally from Haida Gwaii from the Jothlanis clan, the Devil-Headed Eagle. My Haida name is Alkan Gustan Gathande. For the past 6 years, I've been a single dad. This has presented challenges and emotional roller coasters to ride. To cope with it all, my daughter and I became a team. Team strong and team cute. We would cry and laugh together, go on long car rides, and just live our lives as best we can. There are many Indigenous dads like me who are 100% there for their children, who would do anything for their kids, and are changing the cycles of intergenerational trauma and abuse, and are healing themselves so their kids don't have to.
My name is Arsan Buffin. I'm from Flying Dust First Nation, which is about 5 hours away from Edmonton. I'm 37 and I'm a parent of 3 children, ages almost 16, 9, and 5. So I've been a dad since 2004. So 16 years, believe it or not. So in terms of my childhood, I was raised by my grandparents since I was like a week old. So my mom gave me up to my grandparents and they raised me until I was about 18. And my childhood was, was relatively, it was good. I didn't have like a relatively bad childhood. Like we just moved between community to community, like back and forth through like Meadow Lake and Beauval. And I just kept going back and forth. And I went through like 7 different schools. I'm used to transition, I could say, in terms of like the cultural aspect of like growing up. Like my grandparents were Métis. My grandmother went to residential school and like several of her siblings, and my grandpa, he just like started working as soon as he's like 5 or something like that. Not 5, 7. So I didn't grow up with the culture. In terms of like my communities, it was like I knew I was like Native, but it didn't like really mean anything to me, right? In terms of like the small communities, it was like you had like white kids and you had Native kids, and that was just it, right? There was no real dynamics, right? So like growing up, I didn't know anything about like in terms of like culture. It was just like, oh, I'm Native and that's it. But I wasn't a status Native, and I didn't speak the language. I went through a lot of transition going from school to school. And at the age of 16, I dropped out of school, mostly because like my grandparents aren't really like 100% into school, like trying to get them to like come to school to like go to the book fair or like go to parent teacher interviews. Even if I begged, they would refuse to, right? But at the time I didn't understand like what the effects of what residential school did, that my grandparents didn't even want to step foot in the school, right? So I'm like, why don't they want to do this, right? So when I got to that point in grade 9, and I was like, okay, I don't want to go to school. So I just didn't, right? And the school tried to like get me to go back. Like the teacher came to my house and I just refused to see him. I didn't want to go to school. So a lot of my teenage years was playing video games, right? Not doing anything, not achieving. I was living with my grandparents and really contribute. It wasn't a particularly proud time for me, right? When I look back at it, I'm like, right? Once I hit 16, like I said, I dropped out, and like my grandparents didn't really contest it. Nobody in my family really contested it because I guess that's just what they expected of me, right? And it's not like I gave them any reason to think otherwise. So I just quit.
So in terms of dealing with like the children and like on their various stages of education, so like I have one that's in grade 10, I have one that's just starting school, that's kindergarten, and then I have one who's in grade 4, right? And each one of them have their own challenges and like varying support that is needed to help them, right? So as their father, trying to support them through like supporting with homework or helping the other one helping the youngest get integrated into school. It's all a learning process, right? Even if you've been through it once with one child, it's completely different the other time. So the big thing for me in terms of like supporting my children in their various stages of education is being involved. As a parent, trying to make the connection with like culture and my children, right? It's been a journey, right? Because like I'm in the middle there, trying to navigate what it means to be like a male in the world of like being a parent and the culture, right? And trying to make that bridge the two together. Because like sometimes, in some instances, one of my children kind of just has no interest in it, right? And that's fine. I'm not going to force that on them. I don't vibe with that myself. But I do like and I do appreciate that I get the opportunities to learn these things and see what it's like to approach them, like things that you do at a powwow, or how to do beadwork. My 9-year-old boy, he's interested. So like recently we sat down and we spent time working on hoop earrings. I showed him how to do ladder stitch, and he did it. He completed a whole hoop, and then that basically expended his attention span for that activity. But that is huge, right? He didn't have to wait till he was 37 years old or 36-year-old like this guy did. He had the opportunity to learn in his house. He didn't have to go outside of his house to seek somebody else out to show him that skill, right? And for me, that's a huge thing for being a parent, to be able to provide that. How do you smudge? What are the teachings about smudging? So the important thing for me is looking at what it means being a father figure, and being an Indigenous person, and how all those things connect to each other, right? Seeing the adults that I grew up around and being like, I never want to be like that. I'm never going to be that person. I'm never going to do that to my kids, right? And there's like this inherent or established like stereotype that surrounds being an Indigenous dad, that they're a deadbeat, they're unemployed, they're an unavailable father, you know, like the conflict between the father and the mother, right? The fight between the kids, custody, all this negative stuff, all these negative things that are associated with being not only a dad, but an Indigenous dad, right? So I make it like my goal, and I try to live as a positive individual, right? I try to live as a positive individual, a positive father, positive Indigenous person. Or when I deal with other parents, right, I always try to show the best example of what it means to be myself as a parent, which was not what I had growing up. I want my children to have great parents.
What would you say was the best thing about being raised by a single dad?
It was hard at times and all, but he has helped me grown up. He's actually given me confidence. God, I'm about to cry. I don't know why.
It's okay. Just take your time.
And there goes the tears.
It's okay. Tears are a sign.
My dad would always support me no matter what. Like, he would always show up at my concerts. I don't even know why, but he showed up. At my elementary school, we had cultural night every June, and he would show up even if he worked out of town. He would make some arrangements.
So being a daughter to a single dad, tell me a little bit about what that was like growing up.
I had both parents until I reached the age 5. My mom left, so it was just me and him until I was like 11 to 6 years old or so, not too sure. I'm actually glad I had a dad to be there for me when I actually needed it. So just having a single parent as a dad, that guy, is actually kind of fun, even though I don't have a mom to be around as much. I love the little adventures we go on during the weekend.
What is the best adventure that you've been on with your dad?
I love that we used to go to the mountains together and we can just explore, just the two of us. And photography walks. We go take photos, we choose a location. It's kind of fun.
Tell me a little bit about the relationship with your dad.
Growing up, I was a daddy's girl. My dad is the person I've been with mostly all my life. I got used to being around him. I'm safe with him. And I know he wouldn't hurt me. Just the sake that I have a dad, I'm happy.
I am originally from, well, I was born in Vancouver, BC. I was apprehended into the BC foster care system when I was 2 years old. They put me into kinship care. I was living with my auntie Lily from when I was 2 to I don't know when. And that was because my mom was drinking all the time. When I don't exactly remember when I left my Auntie Lily's, but I know I went to live with my Auntie Norma for a while in New Westminster. And then from there, I believe I was returned to my mom. We moved out to Ontario. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old when we moved to Ontario. That place for me is not a good place. A lot of my childhood abuse happened there. Witnessing parties, my mom and stepdad drinking all the time, watching my stepdad, abuse my mom. And then when we left Ontario, we went to Mission. We moved to Mission, BC. I was put back into foster care, and this foster home was so bad. They were hardline religious. Everything that I did was a sin. I was going to go to hell and all this other stuff. I would only have contact with my grandmother. She would come out, probably twice a month just to visit me, and they would pick me up and we would go for a drive. That was one of the good parts of being in foster care, is no matter where I was, she would always come and visit. So jumping forward to about 12, I was living with my mom again. This crappy house on Fraser Street in Vancouver. She was drinking all the time, and she would beat me up all the time. She would leave me alone by myself. And I remember this one time she left for 2 weeks, and I would sit in the front window waiting for her to come back like a dog or something would their master. I remember in school we went on a field trip to Victoria, and my mom made me pack extra clothes. And it turns out that when we got to Victoria, to the inner harbor, my uncle Frank was waiting there for me. And the teacher knew what was up, so the teacher came up and said, "Oh, you're going to go with your Uncle Frank now." But with my Uncle Frank, things really started improving. I was going to school regularly. He owned a catering service, so that's where I learned how to cook. We would go on catering. He'd bring me to catering jobs and things like that. He was as stable as I ever got. He really put in the effort to expose me to culture. We would go up island to the Nanaimo area to go see this elder named J.C. Lucas. And J.C. Lucas would have sweats pretty much every week. That's where I started learning Haida songs and Haida dances. We learned together because he didn't know them before we started this. Like, we would go over to my Auntie Roberta's house and we would cuddle around this tape deck, and we would listen to our uncle, Robert Davidson, sing. So we would play one verse and then we would try to sing it ourselves, and we'd do it that way until we learned the songs. When it comes to my daughter, we right from day one, we had a welcoming ceremony with her, and we wrapped her up in a button blanket that my mom gave to her, and we had a welcoming ceremony as she was wrapped up in that button blanket. When she wanted to start dancing powwow, I made that effort to learn how to sew her a jingle dress. Lots of people, oh, just buy her one, but that's, in my mind, that's not taking part in culture, that's just letting someone else do it for you. The second jingle dress had a lot of Haida inspiration. The colors were red and black, and in the back, on the back of the dress part, there were the copper shields, some of the eagle feathers that I picked in Haida Gwaii that she wore in her hair. So there's a lot of incorporation of Haida culture in with her jingle dress. Some of the challenges that I faced as an Indigenous dad is not having a template on how to be a parent. My dad, my biological dad, left before I was born. As far as like parenting like a toddler and a baby, I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. All I knew how to do is take care of her basics. Like, when she pooped, I changed her diaper, and when she was hungry, I fed her. When it was cold out, I kept her warm, just taking care of her basics. The thing that I keep going back to is I parented out of knowing what I didn't want to be. Meaning, I didn't want to be that parent who got drunk all the time. I didn't want to be that parent who beat up their kid all the time. I didn't want my child to know where the best hiding spots in the house were for when I got drunk and I got violent. Those are the things that I was raised with, and I didn't want that for her. So that pretty much gave me free range on being a parent. Living life as a single dad has its challenges, but the rewards carry more weight. Whether we are driven by a passion to be better than how we grew up, or parenting just comes naturally, Indigenous dads have proven to be vital to their children's development. We do this in spite of the odds being stacked against us, be it intergenerational trauma stemming from residential schools, or being survivors of childhood abuse. These two dads are only a sample of what Indigenous dads are doing on a daily basis. I must point out that not all dads asked to be in this film wanted to be in the spotlight. They are happy operating in the background, doing dad things with their children. Whether we are brand new fathers or seasoned parents, we are Indigenous dads and we love our children.